Hello guys, it's Ryan Ho back with another video. Today I wanted to compare two kind of planar headphones that are both $300. And we have the Audeze Maxwell that comes in at $300, which is a gaming headset that is wireless, but it can also be used in wired mode. And then we have a very audiophile headphone, which is the Hifiman Sundara that's also $300. And we're gonna kind of compare these two because they're around the same price point, but they're made for a little bit differences, but they also have planars in them. So those have a lot of detail. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of wondering like, how do these two compare? So the purpose of this video. And the interesting thing is like Audeze is also like an audiophile company too. They make audiophile headphones too. So it's not like this is strictly just a gaming headset. It has like audiophile grade drivers in it as well. So we'll talk about that. Obviously, one big difference between these two is this is an open back headphone while this is a closed back headphone. So there's some differences that come with that as well. But we'll see how they both compare and answer. Really, the question is like, which one is better? In what scenarios would you use each one and how much do they really differ? Anyways, please like and subscribe down below if you like my videos, helps my videos out. And yeah, let's dive into the comparisons right away. All right, so here we have the Hifiman Sundara. So this headphone is $500 originally. Then it went on sale for $350, so it's a lot cheaper now. And then the other thing about this headphone really is that it really is kind of getting cheaper at $300 now. And I think it's hilarious because like as everything else in the world gets more expensive, the Hifiman Sundara gets cheaper, but it's like one of the most popular and well-regarded headphones ever. So that's an interesting fact, right? But anyways, the Sundara to me is, one of the best open back headphones at its price point of $300. I just find this headphone to be very just nice to listen to and honestly one of the best tuned planars I've heard ever. And of course the build quality is also pretty nice in my opinion. It has the same type of like band as the Audeze, so they both got that suspension band type of stuff. They're both made of kind of premium materials. This is made of metal right here, so it's reinforced nicely. This is also metal. This grill is also metal as well. So this is really kind of a nicely built headphone. Now, the only thing that this thing doesn't have is it doesn't really kind of swivel at all, really. So, the Audeze Maxwell really has that extra adjustment that you can do, which makes it just a little bit more comfortable than the Sundara. But the other thing you have to consider is that the Maxwell is actually a lot heavier than the Sundara. So the difference in weight can also make the difference of making the Sundara more comfortable in my opinion, because you can kind of wear this for a longer period of times without your neck getting kind of sore. And the other thing about Sundara is if you take a closer look, the Sundara has this issue of kind of scratching where you kind of do the extensions because of the build quality. So that's kind of like, the negative about it. But besides that, it's pretty well built. Honestly, for me, when I compare the build quality between both of these headphones, I do think the Maxwell is better built. I don't think the Sundara is badly built, but the Maxwell noticeably doesn't have the same like scratching issues that it has. It has really nice, smooth kind of movements on the headphone, and it just feels like it's made just a little bit of higher quality in my opinion. And the pads are also a little softer as well. They're bigger, plushier too. Not that the Sundaras are not soft, but these ones feel like clouds on your head. So really, I do think I like the Maxwell build a little bit better, but they're both pretty good. So let's talk about sound. So the biggest difference between these two is something that I didn't really think about that much, but when I was actually doing the comparison is that the open and closed nature of these headphones actually makes a pretty big difference in my opinion. So I'm going to kind of describe those differences. Obviously, because the Sundara is open back, sounds just are able to kind of sound further away from your head, and it kind of gives them a kind of wider sound. And in doing so, it also allows you to kind of tell the difference between like when it sounds like here and like here. I just feel like it's a little easier to tell on the Sundara because it just has a bigger sound stage, or a wider sound stage, I should say. They both have pretty tall sound stages, but the width of the Sundara is noticeably better in my opinion. And that does really help kind of hear kind of the notes and how well separated they are. So I think that's definitely the advantage that the Sundara has. The second advantage I noticed about Sundara actually was very interesting is that when you kind of listen to the bass, I actually think the bass of the Sundara is kind of better than the Maxwell, which is very strange when I say it like that, but like the Maxwell actually has more sub bass, like you can hear more of those notes. The Sundara has more feeling of bass, so like when you hear an explosion, you can actually feel the explosion more on the Sundara. And it feels like you're like in the movie, you know what I'm saying? Or you're in the action. And when you hear like a guitar string being plucked, you feel like the guitar is being plucked like right next to you. The Sundara gives you that physical feeling of that happening next to you versus the Maxwell has that, but it's not to the same degree as Sundara. The Sundara just has more, I guess what people call physicality or dynamics. And really that is a big difference that I didn't think I would care that much, but like I noticed it a lot to the point where like the Sundara, like I said, really sounds like the musician's playing next to you or the explosion is right next to you. And this brings an extra element of realism in my opinion that makes it sound really good. One of the things that I was kind of interested in is like, why did I even think the bass is like better on the Sundara? Why does it like move more? And you know, another thing that's like interesting about like headphone designs is if you look at headphones, is they actually have bass ports, right? So even the Audeze Maxwell has bass ports on the back, right? Which is interesting. But then if you look on the left, there's no bass ports here. Now, I'm guessing the reason why there isn't any is because like all the buttons are on the left. So if you look at all the buttons, they kind of have holes. So I'm guessing those probably act as like bass ports. So without needing the same ones on the right. So a bass port actually helps the bass kind of hit harder, have more dynamics. And that's why they're there for, which is really interesting. And like a good example of this is actually this headphone. So this is the HyperX Cloud Orbit S. This headphone, actually, if you look at the back, it has these physical bass ports that you can move to change the bass response of this headphone, right? And actually, if you have it down here all closed, that actually means it has the least amount of bass. So the more kind of space and more open that it has for the driver to move and press out air, actually the more bass it has, which is very interesting in this design. So it just kind of shows you that like having kind of more space to breathe for the drivers really kind of increases the dynamics and the movement of air, honestly. And so in my opinion, one of the reasons why maybe the Audeze Maxwell isn't as kind of has that physical feeling is because it's not open, it's a closed back headphone, versus this has the advantage of kind of being an open back and open air headphone, so it can kind of, you know, move more air and give that more physical feeling, right? Anyways, I spent enough time talking about that. Let's get into the actual sound. So like I said, bass, I think the Sundara actually has more bass texture and feeling, but going to like the mid-range, I do think these headphones are very close, but the Maxwell is more like what I say like HT6XX, which is another headphone that's really known for its vocal quality and how, you know, close they are to sounding, like more intimate, and everything sounds very like clear and forward and like right in front of you. Like the singer is literally singing like right in front of you. That's what the Maxwell sounds like, and it does it honestly one of the best I've heard. The Sundara gets close, but not to the same degree. Like the artist sounds close, but they sound just a few feet back. So they are still very forward and clear, but just not the same degree as Maxwell. In the treble region is kind of where I would say a big difference you can kind of see between these two headphones. I do think the Maxwell, which is like, it's really weird because like I always complain about headphones having too much treble. I would say the Maxwell kind of has not enough treble for me, in my opinion, which is kind of interesting. But you know, if you use it in normal Audeze mode, I feel like there's not enough treble, so I turn it on immersive mode, which increases both the bass and the treble. And even in that mode, I still feel like the treble is not enough. And like what I hear a lot of times with this headphone is like when I hear guitar string plucks, they just don't sound as, you know, lively or good or snappy as they sound on like the Sundara. The Sundara just makes them sound just a little bit more real to me, a little bit more like emphasized, while they sound just a little muted on the Maxwell. So that's kind of my complaint about it. Obviously, if they release the software where you can EQ it, you can probably improve that. But as of now, I would say the Sundara has just more treble emphasis that I think is more balanced and a little bit more to my preference than the Maxwell. And that really kind of helps the top end sound just a little bit more detailed, in my opinion. The gunshots sound a little bit more detailed, in my opinion, as well from the Sundara. And just kind of allows them to kind of, you know, have more emphasis, right? Versus like, for, dialogue and stuff in your games, the Maxwell does do a little bit better in that region. It just sounds a little bit more natural, a little bit more full, in my opinion, than the Sundara. So they both have their strengths and weaknesses, but I guess you can say the Sundara technically has a little bit more strengths because I like its bass and its treble a little bit more than the Maxwell, which I didn't really think I would, but honestly doing this back-to-back comparison, that's what I really found out. When you listen to strings being plucked, you can kind of hear all the small nuances of that sound on the Sundara more, versus I feel like the Maxwell, you hear the main pluck, but then all the kind of smaller reverberations you don't hear as much of. So that's another thing that I noticed between these two that made the Sundara just sound a little bit more, I guess, detailed in that sense too. And that really leads me to like the finding of this is that I actually found myself liking the Sundara more than I thought I would over the Maxwell. Not that the Maxwell is bad, it's just that I think I came to a realization that open back headphones do have some certain advantages, and I kind of really found those advantages when I was doing this comparison and found myself really enjoying the open back headphones more than closed back. All right, so the last question is like between these two, which one's better for like gaming or FPS gaming type of stuff, right? So obviously in story mode gaming, it's like, it comes down to like the sound quality aspect. And I would say each one has their advantage. Like if you're like really dialogue heavy games, and I guess the Maxwell, if you like, just more immersive games, then maybe the Sundara is a little bit more better in my opinion. For FPS gaming, both of them can be used really well. I feel like the Maxwell has better like imaging like in front of you, but then the Sundara has like better separation of the sound. So like it's weird, like for me, like instinctively I think I like the Sundara more than the Maxwell because of the separation, but like the Maxwell definitely makes sound more like they're in front of you versus the Sundara sounds more left and right for imaging in my opinion. But I don't know, instinctively I think I like the Sundara more than Maxwell, which is kind of weird for me to say that, but I guess that's just what I feel when I'm using them. Like the Sundara is just a little bit easier to tell like many things going on versus the Maxwell. Sometimes they just get crunched together a little bit more closely, but it's not like bad. It's just like in comparison to the Sundara, it's just a little easier to tell on the Sundara, if that makes any sense. To me, most of the times I just pick the best sounding headphone, but in this case, I really did find that there is definitely some advantages that you just, maybe you can't recreate in closed back headphones that open back headphones really do have. So if you're looking for like open back headphones, then I guess the Sundara is the option. If you're looking for like, a closed back wireless gaming headphone, then obviously the Maxwell does well. They're both really good headphones. I'm just here to nitpick and kind of, tell you guys the differences. I don't think you can really go wrong with either of these, but that's just kind of what I see and what I kind of felt when I was doing this comparison. And the last thing I want to mention is like, honestly, these two headphones are like way better than like a standard gaming headphone that has like a dynamic driver. Like the amount of detail that you get from Maxwell and Sundara is just on a totally different level in my opinion. So it's like I said, these two headphones are really, really good options and contenders. So yeah, in conclusion, honestly, I feel like I like the Sundara a lot for music listening, that kind of open back, that extra space and that more dynamics where you can like feel the bass, feel the strings being plucked, that like realism that comes with that, and that kind of like smooth kind of fall off of like the notes as they kind of just like fade in the distance that you get from like an open back headphone really makes me like the Sundara a lot. And I do think I prefer the Sundara actually over the Audeze Maxwell for like music listening, especially for gaming. Honestly, I could use both of them, but I think the biggest difference honestly is really like, do you need a closed back headphone? Because like, my neighbor was like doing construction the other day and all I can hear was like the jackhammer going ding, 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 ding. And that's like really annoying. Something like the Maxwell will basically just tune that out while you're listening to your games or music or whatever. Versus, the Sundara, you're just going to hear that jackhammer the whole entire time and it's not really going to be a fun time. And obviously this is wireless, so if you need that wireless functionality, as well as kind of the EQ that's built into it, it does have a lot more extra functionality. So you can use it as like a Bluetooth headphone and stuff like that. So there's definitely more things you can do with the Maxwell than the Sundara, but in like raw, just like listening to music, I do think I like the Sundara more. For the rest, like, you know, gaming and that type of stuff, I do think the Maxwell is really fun, and you can, you know, like I said, tweak it a lot with EQ and stuff, so that really does help this headphone kind of stand out from the crowd. Anyways, I hope you guys like this comparison. Please like, subscribe down below, helps my videos out. I know I've been making a lot of videos about the Audeze Maxwell, but I keep looking at my numbers and like apparently that's all you guys like to watch, because all my other videos are like doing way worse than the Maxwell videos, so I keep making them. But honestly, I do enjoy doing these comparisons because these are the same questions I ask myself, and I'm, you know, curious, genuinely curious, like how these two compared. So I had to like borrow this headphone from my friend just to do this comparison, you know. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.